2 to 3 weeks away. Orla Guerin, BBC News, Jerusalem.
So that's the situation on the ground right now as far as the humanitarian crisis is concerned. Let's talk to Brandon Friedman, who's Director of Research from the Moshe Dayan Centre. That's at Tel Aviv University. Brandon, thank you for being with us. We have talked extensively about the military operation, also that growing humanitarian issue. Given your experience, I'd like to talk about some of the longer-term implications of what's happened over the last 6 weeks. And we know that the longer-term implications of what happened on October the 7th will take some time to play out. But it comes as a lot of relations with the Arab world were starting to normalise with Israel. I'm thinking particularly here Saudi Arabia, for example. What is your assessment of where those relations stand right now?
Thank you, Ben. First, I think it's really important to emphasize, if we're going to talk about the humanitarian situation regarding the Hamas-Israel war, that we call attention to the fact that we're now 38 days into nearly 240 hostages being held by Hamas in Gaza. And we need to bring those hostages home, many of whom are elderly, some of whom are as young as 10 months old, and who aren't getting proper medication that they may need and medical attention. So I just want to add that point into the story of the humanitarian situation in Gaza. The Israeli hostages are still there and still being held. Now, regarding the long-term regional dynamics, I think one of the concerns right now is escalation. And we have to ask ourselves the question whether we stand on the brink of a regional war. If I look at events over the past weekend between Israel and Hezbollah and Iran's partners in the region, there was a drone that was sent from Syria that hit the southern tip of Israel, the city of Eilat, and struck an elementary school in which 37 children were in the building at the time. Thankfully, none of them were hurt. But a miscalculation, or had that suicide drone hit in a different place in the building, we might be on the brink of a much broader war than the one we face today. And so I think the questions of the day after and the questions of Israel's relations in the region really depend on how things evolve on the ground from now moving forward. I think there's an assumption here that this war is going to end soon or end neatly, and that may not be the case, particularly given some of the statements we're hearing coming out of Beirut and some of the actions we're seeing on Israel's northern border in southern Lebanon.
Yes, and you raise a number of points there. We don't have time to get through all of them, but I'm particularly interested, and I know that your organisation and yourselves, you've written extensively about renewed fears of an ideological competition for religious legitimacy amongst Muslims in the region. And that is an interesting point, and I wonder if you can elaborate and just explain what you mean by that, because there are so many players in this region, and it's oftentimes like this when it's difficult to know and difficult to get at the source of who is backing who and why. Just explain what you mean by that statement.
Sure. Hamas is basically a wing of the Muslim Brotherhood, and the Muslim Brotherhood was supported in the region by Qatar and Turkey for the better part of the last decade. And they've been opposed by the United Arab Emirates, Saudi Arabia, and Egypt, amongst others. And this division between the states that oppose the Muslim Brotherhood and see it as a revolutionary organization seeking to destabilize the region and the conservative regimes in the region view the Muslim Brotherhood as a grave enemy. Which is why countries like the Emirates and Saudi Arabia may not necessarily want to see Hamas survive the war. They certainly don't. They certainly would like to see a ceasefire, but they certainly don't want to see Hamas come out of this war strengthened. And of course, Qatar and Turkey have provided refuge and to a certain degree patronage to those elements. And so what we see with the Hamas-Israel war is sort of a reigniting of this intra-Sunni division over the status of the Muslim Brotherhood, which many view as a very destabilizing force in the region. And certainly the events of October 7th would certainly suggest that.
Brandon, really grateful for you being with us on the programme tonight. There's a lot for us to fit in on the programme, but it's good to get your insight. So thank you for joining us there.
Thanks for having me, Ben.
Thank you.